an international student. Most people I meet would ask me why I want to study in the US. Traveling across half of the earth just for homework in my second language and classes on Saturdays. My answer has always been about how much I value the American style of education, its emphasis on writing and critical thinking. I tell them I no longer want to do countless numbers of math problems, ones the machines could solve. I thought it was pointless, and I wanted to do something only humans can do, like writing. Yes, I did want all these things above, but the whole story is more than that. The first time I felt determined to study abroad was in 8th grade. In China, we don't have personal doctors who perform physical exams on students. Instead, the school divides the students by gender and throw all the girls in the entire class in one exam room. Makes all of them take off their shirts and pants at the same time, exposing their bodies in their undergarments. My instant reaction was I just wasn't going to do it. But the nurses made everyone wait for me and didn't allow anyone to leave until I took off my clothes so that they could take my measurements. At the end, I surrendered to the system. My eyes welled up with tears of anger, and the emotion was so strong that I swore to myself I would leave the country. It wasn't later until I realized it was my insecurities about my body, not the Chinese system, that made the experience so prominently painful. The 15-hour flight to a country on the other side of the earth does not block away my insecurities, blow away my frustrations with my own body image, or hide me away from my fears. Insecurities, frustrations, and fear stay with you no matter how many new people you surround yourself with, or how many miles you physically move. Insecurity is feeling like you need to run away from yourself. For example, a girl ashamed by her physical appearance may avoid crowds not only because she wants to run away from other people and their judgment, but part of herself telling her she was fat and ugly. Some might say that they are afraid of other people's judgments, not their own. I think others' judgment is absolutely powerless unless you become afraid because you think what they say about you might be true. This social and psychological phenomenon manifests in the feeling of wanting to be someone else. Some argue the reason behind that idea is that people fail to see the difficulties other people experience, since other people tend to display a better image of their lives. Although their theory makes sense to me, the root of the issue is still self-judgment. Why do we judge ourselves so harshly? Many of you have heard the saying, man's greatest enemy is himself. One's greatest fear is also him or herself. In Mario Hornbacher's book, Wasted: A Memoir of Anorexia and Bulimia, she explores her experience of fear pushing her down the path towards an eating disorder. She says, I was reminded again of why I was an anorexic. Fear of my needs for food, for sleep, for touch, for simple conversation, for human contact, for love. At this point in her memoir, she was assigned a roommate against her will after a very lonely and dark time during her years as a college student. Before she met her new, rosy-cheeked, beautiful, and most importantly, normal roommate. Hornbacher was 5'1" and weighed about 60 pounds. A cup of yogurt was her weekly intake. She consumed from 6 to 8 pots of coffee per day. She didn't sleep. It was at the darkest time of her life when she realized it was fear that led her down this path. Hornbacher's fear is not harsh criticism or isolation, but unmet desires, such as wanting a group of friends you can go out with on Saturday nights, a dining hall table with people you can feel comfortable sitting with, a close or special friend to talk about your childhood, share sad stories with, and reveal your true self. She doesn't say she was afraid of the pressure the fashion industry on women's body image, or society's negative view on a healthy amount of subcutaneous fat. She talks about her human needs, not only the survival needs, but her desire for touch, connection, and love. In Hornbacher's memoir, insecurity and one's inward judgment fuse with the profound question of why people are insecure or feel inadequate. They are afraid they can't be desirable to connect with people around them. The roommate assigned to Hornbacher was the sole human connection she had had for about 2 years. Hornbacher writes, "Having a normal person around me made it poignantly clear that I was out of control. She ate, she slept. I watched her do both, as if watching the fascinating habits of an exotic beast." The human part of her roommate reminded Hornbacher how insecure she was, as she writes, "I was afraid of being human." Implicit in human contact is the exposure of the self, the interaction of the selves. The problem surrounding body image develops in a very young age, almost as soon as an individual understands the concept of self and others. According to Linda C. Andrews in her article published in the American Journal of Maternal Child Nursing in 2003, over 80% of 10-year-old girls are afraid of being fat. Thomas F. Cash writes in his published book on body image that by middle school, 40 to 70% of girls are dissatisfied with two or more parts of their body, and body satisfaction hits rock bottom between the age of 12 and 15. I wonder, are they afraid of the judgment from other people or themselves? Why do we judge ourselves so harshly? I never come up with a good metaphor for people's judgment until I sat in the auditorium and listened to the speech on the awareness of wild bears. You don't run away from the bears because you will never outrun them. You shout, fight back, and make yourselves look big. Do the same thing to your own self-judgments. You'll never be able to outrun it. You can't ever outrun yourself. And the insecurity is always within. Maybe you're perfectly content with your outward appearance. Perhaps the issue surrounding body image doesn't apply to your life or mean anything to you at all. But have an internal dialogue and maybe realize how and why something in your life impacts you the way it does. It might just be the first step to a big and positive change in your life.